Okay, good day, folks. This is Ratish Pandey from Action Coach, and I have with me Rajiv Gupta. Rajiv, before we start this interview, I'd love to hear who you are and what has been your experience.
Okay, thank you, Ratish, for having me here. So, you know my name, Rajiv Gupta. I have 32 years of work ex, spent bulk of my career with Honda Cars, almost 15 years there, and then spent about 10 years at Reliance Industries in Mumbai. In between these two assignments, I dabbled with an education startup because education is my passion. And right now, I work as CEO of Tricolite Electrical Industries. We are India's leading switchboard manufacturers, which is basically electrical panels. Joined them 3 years back. It's a family-owned business, 60-year-old family, and I run the operation as CEO, reporting to the board, and the journey couldn't have been better.
Phenomenal. Great to have you here, Rajiv. And with that, let's get straight into my questions. So I think the first question that I feel which is interesting and which I'm sure you can answer, given the fact that Rajiv, I looked at your profile. You also are an author of a very interesting book, and we'll come to that book a little later. And I'm sure from your experiences in working in different industries, you'll be able to give us some great insights to all our viewers. So. I see you have been on a growth path in your existing company. What do you attribute your growth to? What would entrepreneurs learn as to how they can grow their business? What should they watch out for? What are the trappings that they should not get into?
So I think I will go, with first principles. Like fundamentals pe pehle chalte hain, so that makes it a little easy.
Yeah.
See, first thing is that I belong to a business family. So they say business blood. And probably I'm the only one in my immediate and extended family who's an employee, right? And my father was a businessman, but there were family situation. He passed away and I was just in school. So, pehli baat, I want to say that the world of an entrepreneur or a businessman and the world of an employee are very, very different. Okay. And what happens is that when you are especially an employee reaches the top position, very senior level, and you're directly dealing with promoter, you're insulated as long as you have your boss dealing with the promoter. But when you reach a level where you have to, every decision you're reporting to the board or the owner or the family members, what happens is that a businessman is a businessman because he has a risk appetite. Usko life mein kuch kar guzarna hai, right? He's never happy with what he has. Today's 100 crores, 500 crores, 1,000, 5,000. And he looks at the world in a very different way. Like suppose he says, "Meko nahi investment karni hai." So when I was setting up dealers across the country, so I used to say, look, I'm going to give you 12% return or 15% return. At that time, FD rates were 8%. There's a 4-5% almost. If you do well, you'll earn double of FD. So he said, FD? What is FD? Fixed deposit? So my value of money is fixed deposit plus alpha. That was a shock to me. And I said, what is the other way to look at returns? Because I would put my money, if I had any spare, in an FD. Now, when I did a depth interview with some of very big businessmen when I was setting up petrol pumps for Reliance, some of them were in urban and rural areas. So I said, what is a good return on investment for you? This is just one example. He says, look, in my current business, if I infuse, you're asking me to invest a few crores, suppose I take that money and put it in my existing business, maybe I'll make a 22-25% return. And you're asking me to set up a new business. So and there's a risk there. So unless it's 30% doesn't make sense. And all our planning was, 12-15 is great. This is just one example. What does an employee do? मेरी नौकरी बची रहे, रिस्क ना हो, घर चलता रहे. और बिजनेसमैन क्या कहता है, यार 0 से 100 से 500, 500 से 1000 मजा नहीं आ रहा. How will you get मजा? When I'll use Hindi in between. जब कुछ कर गुजरना.
Hindi is good.
So I asked another businessman, यार कर गुजरने का क्या मतलब है? अब 1000 करोड़ पे पहुंच चुके हो, रेस्टलेस हो, आप कर लो यार. He says the maza I will get pro top line if my net worth is 100 200 crores, if I take a risk of 25 crores, it doesn't get my adrenaline rush. If my net worth is 200 crores and my top line is 200 crores, that maza I will get, which you get when you get promoted, you get a 40% increment, is when I take a risk of 300 crores, which is more than my net worth. Now imagine the businessman is coming from exponential growth, कुछ कर गुजरना है, and नौकरी वाला is नहीं नहीं बच के चलो, ये करेंगे तो क्या हो जाएगा.
True.
Now this now the moment this happens, unless you can reconcile these two worlds, so what is the consequence of this? Sorry, long answer, but I thought let's go to fundamental.
No, it's a good answer. Yeah.
Unless the businessman should say, यार ये ऐसे क्यों सोचता है, बड़ी नेगेटिव सोच है, डरपोक है. एंड नौकरी वाला इसे डिल्यूजनल है, डिस्ट्रैक्टेड माइंड है.
Yeah.
1000 करोड़ का तो पूरा नेटवर्थ है, 300 करोड़ का डालेंगे रिस्क, 400 करोड़ बैंक से और उठाएंगे, 1:1 भी लोगे तो 300 डालोगे तो अब 600 करोड़ इन्वेस्ट करोगे, 5,000 करोड़ बनना है 3 साल में. अरे भैया, आर यू ओके? नाउ व्हाट हैपेंस, आई एम जस्ट गिविंग यू टिपिकल बोर्ड रूम. This conflict is always there because the professional, his training is of course grow, but grow with moderation, execute properly. मेरे पास बंदे हैं क्या, मेरे पास कैपिटल है क्या, मेरे पास कैपेसिटी है क्या. सो ये उसकी सोच है. और बिजनेसमैन क्या कह रहा है, भाई यार मजा नहीं आ रहा, कुछ कर गुजरना है. और ये जो मेरा सीईओ है, ये जो मेरे वाइस प्रेसिडेंट बैठे हैं ना, इनको मेरी बात समझ क्यों नहीं आती. एंड वीपी एंड सीईओज कह रहे हैं, इनको बात क्यों नहीं समझ आती. So what happens? Most cases, separation. Yeah, उसकी भी नहीं आएगा. And from this guy's point of view, या दूसरी नौकरी ले लो. So most cases separation happens, or you continue till resentment. With resentment, businessman says, look, if I throw this guy out or I replace, I don't know, चलाते हैं काम. नौकरी वाला कहते हैं दूसरी पता नहीं कैसी होगी, ढूंढते हैं. Disaster. The businessmen who have made these enterprises do the guy, the employee, and the employee could say, look, if he's saying this, his lens is different. His dad took so many risks.
Yeah.
His dad woke up at 5 a.m., went on a scooter. मैंने वो सब देखा है भैया. तो जब दो लोग ये समझ जाएं कि हमारी दुनिया का नजरिया अलग है, बिकॉज मेरी अपब्रिंगिंग अलग है, मेरा लेंस अलग है, my worldview is different, my paradigm is different, and they see each other, they agree to disagree without being disagreeable. Okay sir, आप ये कह रहे हो, मैं ये कह रहा हूं, क्या करना है. And then whatever we decide, whether we, businessman कहता है रिस्क लेना है, नौकरी वाला बोलता है नहीं लेना. Suppose you decide, okay, one is that you go ahead and take the risk, then everybody should be aligned and go 100% in it. That's how companies are built. If I say ये नहीं करना है and businessman says करना है, and I say, look, this is going to fail, मैंने बोला था, I told you. I call this I told you syndrome. No, I told you syndrome. Once we decide we are going ahead, then no matter what my view is, 100% of the organization's energy, resources, finance, people should be aligned to achieve. So, summary. The root of conflict is different worldview between the owners and the senior professionals. Unless they are able to reconcile that the worldview will be different, but we have to take decision and move ahead. And once we decide to move ahead, you don't know. You can never predict whether the businessman was right or the employee was right. जो भी decision लिया उसको पूरे तन मन धन से करेंगे, देखेंगे. I think this is at the fundamental level. I think this is what I have seen in so many of the businesses that I have worked in, or the so many dealers are, hua and push goes off in one generation or two generations.
Great. So thank you for that detailed answer. Obviously, what I hear is getting the reconciliation between the senior management and the owners, so there's clarity in what we want to achieve. And then once there is clarity, get resources, people, places, everything in the right spot to hit that growth. Great. Let me, as the leader of your organization, you are also an employer, right? And I'm sure in your career as a manager, as a leader, you would have looked at employees, hired employees, nurtured them, mentored them. So, quick question. What is the biggest learning you've had as an employer?
Okay. I think the biggest learning I have had, and I've also changed my style
Okay.
a lot, is that we think that employees work for money, only work culture. I think सबसे बड़ी चीज एक employee की, at least for Indians I can say, is self-respect and self-esteem. Because the moment, and I think all the entrepreneurs or most of the entrepreneurs need a training on डांट कैसे मारनी है. समझ नहीं आता, screaming, shouting doesn't work. Maybe it worked in 70s, 80s जब नौकरियां नहीं होती थी. I started working in 91. That time there were less jobs. But first thing is, I think you have to remember that treat people exactly as you would like to be treated. And forget about master-slave relationship. Forget about Malik Nokar. सब नौकर है, सब मालिक. 18-year-old or a 24-year-old.
You mentioned the golden rule. Yeah. Go ahead. Go ahead.
Behave exactly the same way. Behave exactly the same way. Because once you treat people with respect, respect से क्या होता है, धीरे धीरे gets converted into love. Or because when one of my friends was doing PhD and she went and interviewed my subordinates in various companies, so the one thing they said is that मेरे को treat बड़ी अच्छी तरह किया, and I didn't do anything extra. मैं तो normal तरीके से बात करी, but it was relative. So this is the golden rule. Think about it. Self-respect of your people is the most critical thing in having employees on board, nurturing them and getting the best out of them.
Great, Rajiv. While on employees, obviously, sorry about that. What qualities do you look for in an employee when you're hiring them? And how do you really foster within them a positive, productive approach to work? So two things.
Okay.
When you're hiring, what qualities you look for? And then once they're employed, how do you foster a productive, positive approach to work?
So when I'm looking at an employee, firstly, it has to be in conjunction with the role. If I'm looking for a production guy or a sales guy, it'll be different. But the common denominator is whatever opportunity was given to him, did he or she make the best of it? So, the companies I've worked for previously, pedigree and covenanted cadre, IAMs, this was very important. But I have always felt that whether you take a guy from a top institute or an unknown institute, I always see, जब जागे तब सवेरा. 10th में अच्छे नंबर नहीं आए, in many company बाहर. 60 से कम आए, नहीं, just wait. 12th में आए, कोई बात नहीं आए. Graduation में आए, PG में आए, वहां भी नहीं आए, नौकरी करी. But did you do something in the job? नहीं सर, first job में नहीं किया. कभी तो आपने कुछ demonstrate किया होगा. So first thing I look for is whatever was done, given to you, did you make the best of it? And was there a delta? Because for me, that attitude of a go-getter, of a firefighter, of a kuch karna hai is very important, first. And second is non-negotiable is integrity. Because people talk about financial integrity. I think there are lots of governance mechanism you can get caught. But there is also integrity that I reach office at 10 and then I, start looking at share market. And it's difficult to figure out, Pratish. It's not easy. But I think if you ask the questions rightly and have the right psychometric test and ref check, So for me, go-getter attitude and integrity are the two critical components which I look for. Academics and all, over a period of time, I've realized really don't matter. Tier 2 colleges, tier 3 colleges from rural areas can do better than, best boarding school and best IIM. No, that's out for me. Over 32 years, I've realized fire honi chahiye. How do you nurture them? I think सबसे जरूरी चीज what I said is the leader has to have that one-to-one connect with that person to know what will it take to nurture him. There are different human beings are all different. My face and other person's face is different. Standard training program. ये कर दिया HR ने tick box लगा दिया. No. Looking at the individual needs, looking at the individual aspirations, looking at what is his lacking, I think you have to do a mix of training, mentorship, right? Exposure, and then track it. Is it moving over time? Because I have seen one thing, Ratish, that if you invest your time and energy, I heard employees, उन्होंने मेरे बारे में सोचा कि मेरी ग्रोथ कैसे होगी. I think that one-to-one connect and that empathy and that care, and I can tell you can't fake it. मैं एक SOP बना दूं, आप ऐसे केयर करना, ऐसे बात करना, no. Human beings are smart, they read energy. अरे ये कहीं से पढ़ के आया है, इसलिए एम्पैथी हो रहा है, वैसे तो ऐसे बात करता है. So if you genuinely care for people, you identify the needs and aspirations, identify the gaps, make programs. It could be a mix of training, mentorship, coaching, or exposure. Send them to good seminars, and then see uska kya impact aa raha hai. I think this is how I feel. You have to. And last point ये है that every employee, business card आज भी इसको बड़ा अच्छा लगता है. सर मैं असिस्टेंट मैनेजर से डिप्टी मैनेजर बन गया. अपने घर में आके पापा को देता है. So I think जो as Indians, I think that flat structure and all doesn't work. मैं 5 साल तक एग्जीक्यूटिव के बाद मैनेजर GM, नो, doesn't work in India. I've tried all the models. I think हर 2-3 साल में ना एक कुछ सिंबॉलिकली उसको बोल दो, सर आप बातें तो बड़ी करते हो, लेकिन सर मैं तो 10 साल से असिस्टेंट मैनेजर हूँ. I think a mix of that. You need that internal work and you need some external symbols to let him feel कि यार ये सिर्फ pep talk नहीं है, but I'm also growing. So these two things, help employees longevity and to get the best out of them.
Very interesting. Very, very interesting. So you really hit on the point, which we also talk about the fact that, hire for competency, skills are trainable. And then, of course, when you get the people on board, really empathy, the emotional piece, and also the fact that you've connected it with what the Indian society and what people in the society look for. So really great approach, Rajiv. Really commend you on that. So before we close the interview, I'd also like to talk and let you talk about one more aspect. Because you are at the position you're currently running 4 plants, adding one more plant in the very near future, 5 plants, diverse locations. How do you spend and how do you balance your time? Because I guess it'll be taking a fair amount of time and bulk of time during the day for managing. And how many employees do you manage? 500 plus or?
Yeah, it's more than that. It's more than that.
So talk a little bit about that. How do you manage all this?
So again, Ratish, my views are, at different age, I think it differently. Firstly, I think this work-life balance. जिसको बैलेंस की जरूरत है ना, वो तो अपना काम एंजॉय नहीं कर रहा. मैं जब ऑफिस में होता हूँ, क्या मैं कुछ नहीं सोचता अपने घर के बारे में? या मेरे 4 पेंडिंग काम थे. आई केम होम ऑन अ फ्राइडे नाइट हैविंग ड्रिंक्स विद माय फ्रेंड्स एंड डिनर्स. मेरे को सैटरडे मॉर्निंग या संडे को चिंता नहीं होती काम की. So I feel that life is a continuum. Our mind, my bosses always taught me, work and home. No. So I feel that if you are firstly enjoying your work and you're connected, so there is no need of work life. I will not work after this. I am counting my hours. You are in the wrong job. Please change. Find out what you're passionate about. I really recommend everybody. जिसको जरूरत है ना work life balance की, वो उसको he has to change the work he's doing. So I don't believe in work life balance. Because I feel my mind is continuous, ऑफिस में भी आ जाते हैं काम, but of course you should be conscious कि मेरे को इतने घंटे देने हैं. Now, how do I still try to strike the balance? I think there are two stakeholders. काम तो सबसे पहला stakeholder है, because वही identity है and you're responsible. Second stakeholder is your family, right? You have to be, उसको भी कामों में लिख लो ना कहीं पे. Here, I need to give my, attention and time to family. And most important is listening. When you are talking to your family member, whether it's your wife or children, and आपके दिमाग में काम चल रहे हैं, then there's something wrong. I think quality of time is very, very important. And the next stakeholder is you and your health. I think ये सोचना कि यार मैं 2 घंटे और काम कर लेता हूं ना, तो शायद यार अच्छा हो जाएगा. नहीं भैया, मशीन यही है. गाड़ी का एग्जाम्पल है. समटाइम्स इफ यू रनिंग लेट, यार पेट्रोल नहीं भरवाता, रिजर्व के नीचे आ चुकी है, लेट हो जाऊंगा 2 मिनट से, या पेट्रोल पंप में 7 मिनट लगेंगे. अग्रीड, बिल्कुल सही है. बट अगर खाली हो गई ना, तो फिर पता नहीं 2 घंटे भी लग सकते हैं. So 3 stakeholders you have to manage. And I think if you're enjoying your work, it just happens very seamlessly. And, I never think about, ki work-life balance. I think it just happens very naturally, intuitively, because our minds are all integrated, right? So that's my take. Very different from what I read, so many hours of work. Ye kyun karna hai? I'll give you one example. I have certain office hours. एंड इट्स ऑल्सो डिपेंड्स. अगर आप एक इंडिविजुअल वर्कर हो, सॉफ्टवेयर प्रोग्रामर हो सकता है चलता हो कि सर मेरे तो 7 बज गए. Few days back I got a call at 12:05 a.m. Okay, and obviously it was an unknown number. So I was debating यार कि fraud call है, but something told me नहीं यार उठा लो. Okay, I picked up the phone. There was a customer in crisis, and he says, I tried 2-3 people in your organization, and I got your number from Mr. X, because you had met him at some time.
Yeah.
And can you help? And I just thank God कि मैंने फोन उठा लिया और उसको spam नहीं सोचा, right? Because spammer generally उनका 8-9 बजे तक हो जाता है. Now tell me, and he was in a crisis, and I could make one call. लगा 15 मिनट लग गए, आधा घंटा लग गया. अब मैं बोलूं नहीं जी यार 12 बजे तो मैं काम नहीं करता. It depends on nature of your work.
Yeah.
If the people are dependent on you, you have to be available. तो यार 15 मिनट ज्यादा सो लो सुबह यार, come half an hour late. I mean, so I think that's my take. I think it's all very, very. I really get surprised when I read all this, thing about kitne ghante, kitna hours. Just enjoy your life and work and balance it out and freak out.
Yeah.
I mean, that's work for me. I don't know it works for others.
True. I wish a lot of entrepreneurs pick up this wisdom from you, Rajiv. And I'm sure there's, so many people who will watch this video will definitely pick this up from you. So
thank you.
Great. Now, before I close, and a quick one, maybe 1 minute, you've been an author for this wonderful book, How to Work with the Indian SME Entrepreneur Owner. Love to hear your 1 minute piece on that.
Okay. So,
and you can talk about it in Hindi also, because it's pretty much.
So what I have written, it's a satire with lots of cartoons and a lot of humor. So I had one approach, ज्ञान देना, ये करो, ये मत करो. So in that book, what I've said is, ये कर लो और consequence खुद सोच लो. So it's a funny book where I've been little mean with the family business owners, if I may say so. And I've tried to show that Lala, Muneem, चमचा, ये जो ट्रिनिटी है, ये जो सो कॉल्ड ट्रिनिटी है, और एक जो आप सो कॉल्ड एमएनसी के प्रोफेशनल को लाते हो, ठीक है, कि हम भी कुछ बनेंगे, और उसको काम नहीं करने देते हो, भैया मत ही लाओ यार. Okay, and so this is what I've tried to say, and I've tried to explain to a professional that if you are being offered a job at a so-called company with a 2x 3x salary, तो थोड़ा भैया careful रहो, know what to expect, know how to navigate, in crocodile infested waters. So the focus of the book is for a professional to survive with the Trinity and a distracted Lala. And I basically took dysfunctional companies, which did not make the cut. And why they did not make the cut? So Lala को मैंने कोई ज्ञान नहीं दिया, because Lala तो भगवान होते हैं. I call them gods and kings. So उनको कोई ज्ञान नहीं दिया. अगर उनको समझ में आता है कि मेरे इन कर्मों से ये हुआ तो अच्छी बात है, नहीं आता तो कोई बात नहीं. This book is targeted at employees who have either worked or are contemplating to work in the family business, how to survive and thrive. Because even in the worst of the family businesses, I have seen, people have really enjoyed careers because there are definite advantages of working for family business, the kind of empowerment you can get. So that's the book about. But it's a very funny book. It's a satire. So that's a statutory warning. There's no gyan.
Great. Thank you, Rajiv, for your time. Really appreciate this.